This interview was supposed to be polite. It was supposed to be controlled, and for the first few minutes, it was. But what happened next wasn't loud. It wasn't chaotic. It was worse than that. Because by the time the first question landed, everyone in the studio could feel it. This wasn't a conversation. It was a test. And Jodie Foster knew exactly what was coming. The studio lights were softer than usual that morning. Outside the large windows, the park looked frozen in time. Bare trees, pale winter light. Everything muted, almost peaceful. The kind of backdrop producers love because it signals calm, safety, control. Inside the studio, Joy Behar leaned slightly forward in her chair, papers stacked neatly in front of her. Her posture was relaxed, familiar, confident. This was her space. She knew every camera angle, every pause, every beat of silence. Across from her, Jodie Foster sat upright, hands folded loosely in her lap. She wasn't tense, but she wasn't relaxed either. Her expression was neutral, almost unreadable, the kind of face that gives nothing away. Not fear, not irritation, not approval. A face built for listening, not reacting. Joy smiled. "Jodie, it's so good to have you here." The tone was warm. The opening was safe. Compliments followed. Her career, her longevity, her intelligence. The audience responded exactly as expected. Light applause, comfortable laughter. This was the easy part. Jodie nodded politely, offering brief responses. Thoughtful, measured, not evasive, but careful. Anyone watching casually would have thought, this is going well. But there was already something off. Joy didn't look at Jodie the way she usually looks at guests she admires. There was an edge beneath the warmth, a curiosity that felt less like interest and more like inspection. And then Joy shifted the conversation. "So," she said, glancing briefly at her notes, "you've always been selective about political conversations." The word selective hung in the air longer than necessary. Jodie's eyes flicked up, just for a moment. "Yes," she replied calmly. "I've always believed in speaking carefully." Joy nodded. Carefully? Or quietly? The smile was still there. But the tone had changed. Jodie didn't answer right away. She tilted her head slightly as if weighing whether the question was worth engaging at all. Finally, she spoke. "I don't think silence and care are the same thing." Joy laughed lightly. The audience followed. It sounded friendly, but it wasn't dismissive laughter. It was the kind that signals, "I'm not done yet." "Of course," Joy said. "But don't you think, given everything happening right now, that silence can be interpreted?" Interpreted, not accused, not challenged. Interpreted. Jodie straightened in her chair. "I'm not responsible for other people's interpretations," she said evenly. "I'm responsible for my words." That should have been the end of it. But Joy wasn't looking for an answer. She was setting a frame. "Well," Joy continued, leaning back now, "some people would say that when you have a platform like yours, choosing not to speak is a statement." There it was, not a question. A premise. The studio grew quieter. Even the background chatter from the crew seemed to fade. One of the co-hosts glanced sideways, sensing the shift. Jodie inhaled slowly. "I've never believed that being loud is the same as being useful," she said. "And I don't believe in performative outrage." Joy's smile tightened, just slightly. "Performative," she repeated. "That's interesting, because others might say restraint is a luxury." A luxury. This time, Jodie didn't look away. "Luxury implies comfort," she replied. "And there's nothing comfortable about being constantly pushed to prove your morality on demand." The audience didn't laugh. They didn't clap either. Joy adjusted her papers, a subtle reset, but her eyes stayed locked on Jodie. "So you don't feel any responsibility," she said, "to be clearer, given your influence?" Jodie paused. This wasn't a pause for drama. It was the pause of someone deciding whether to step onto unstable ground. "I feel responsibility," she said finally, "but not obligation to satisfy expectations that change depending on who's asking." The temperature in the room dropped another degree. Joy nodded slowly. Some would call that detached. Jodie's jaw tightened, just a fraction. "Some people confuse detachment with discipline," she replied. That was the first moment the tension became visible. Joy crossed her arms. "Discipline," she said, "or avoidance." There it was again, the pattern. Joy wasn't asking what Jodie believed. She was asking why Jodie wouldn't say it the way others wanted her to, and Jodie could feel it. Her shoulders remained steady, but her expression had changed. The calm was still there, but it was now holding something back. "Joy," she said quietly, "I don't believe political engagement has to look the same for everyone." Joy tilted her head. "But don't you think," she pressed, "that choosing not to take a side is, in itself, taking one?" This time, Jodie didn't answer immediately. The silence stretched longer than before, and for the first time since the interview began, it was clear. This wasn't about politics anymore. It was about control, and Jodie Foster had just realized that the questions weren't going to stop. The silence after Joy's last question didn't feel accidental. It felt intentional. Joy let it stretch just long enough to become uncomfortable, then shifted in her seat, as if preparing to reframe the conversation entirely. The warmth from the opening minutes of the interview was gone now. What remained was something colder, sharper. "So let me ask this differently," Joy said. "Do you think neutrality is still acceptable right now?" The word acceptable landed hard. Jodie's eyes stayed fixed on Joy, but her posture changed. She leaned back slightly, creating space between herself and the table. Not retreat, distance. "I don't frame my values in terms of acceptability," she replied, "especially not based on the political climate of a given week." Joy raised an eyebrow. "A week?" she repeated. "Some would say this has been going on for years." Jodie nodded once. "And that's exactly why I'm careful." Joy smiled, but this time it didn't reach her eyes. "Careful," she said, "or insulated." There it was again, the reframing. The audience shifted in their seats. One of the co-hosts glanced toward the producer's booth, then back at the table. This was no longer small talk. Jodie exhaled slowly through her nose. "I don't believe in turning every conversation into a loyalty test," she said. "That doesn't move anything forward." Joy leaned forward now. "But when people are hurting," she said, her voice firmer, "silence from people with power can feel like abandonment." Power. The word hung between them. Jodie's jaw tightened. "I don't think influence gives anyone the right to demand performance from others," she replied, "especially not moral performance." Joy laughed softly, shaking her head. "Moral performance," she echoed. "That's an interesting phrase, because some people would say refusing to speak is exactly that. A performance of detachment." This time, the audience didn't laugh. Jodie folded her hands together, fingers interlaced. "Detachment implies disengagement," she said. "I'm deeply engaged. I just don't believe engagement has to be public to be real." Joy tilted her head, studying her. "But you're public," she said. "That's the point. You don't get to opt out of that." That was the moment the temperature changed. Jodie's eyes narrowed, just slightly. "I get to decide how I participate," she said. "No one else." Joy leaned back, crossing her arms. "Well," she said, "some would argue that's easy to say when you've spent decades protected by status, wealth, and admiration." The word protected landed like a blade. Jodie didn't respond immediately. The silence this time wasn't polite. It was heavy. "Are you suggesting," Jodie said slowly, "that my perspective is invalid because of my career?" Joy shrugged. "I'm saying privilege creates blind spots." There it was. Privilege. The audience stirred. A few gasps. One of the co-hosts shifted uncomfortably, opening her mouth as if to interject, then thinking better of it. Jodie sat very still. "I've spent my entire career being told where I belong and where I don't," she said quietly. "I don't need a lecture on blind spots." Joy waved a hand dismissively. "This isn't about you personally," she said. "It's about responsibility." Jodie's eyes hardened. "Then stop making it personal," she replied. The tension was now unmistakable. Joy leaned forward again. "But don't you think," she pressed, "that when people with voices like yours choose not to take a clear stand, it empowers the wrong people?" Jodie shook her head slowly. "I think forcing people into declarations they don't believe in empowers something far worse," she said. "It empowers dishonesty." Joy opened her mouth to respond, but Jodie continued. "And I won't participate in that." The studio was completely silent now. Joy stared at her for a beat longer than necessary. "So, you're saying," Joy said, "that people asking for clarity are the problem?" Jodie's voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath it now. I'm saying coercion dressed up as conscience is still coercion. That was the moment Joy's expression changed. The patience was gone. Wow, Joy said, shaking her head. That's quite a deflection. Jodie leaned forward for the first time. No, she said. It's a boundary. Joy scoffed. Boundaries are convenient when you don't want to answer hard questions. Jodie looked directly at her. And pressure is convenient when you want to control the answer, the audience murmured. Joy's lips tightened. You're avoiding the core issue, she said. Jodie didn't look away. No, she replied. I'm refusing your framing of it. That sentence hung in the air like a challenge. For the first time since the interview began, Joy didn't immediately respond. She glanced down at her notes, then back up. Well, she said slowly, maybe we need to talk about why that framing makes you so uncomfortable. Jodie's expression shifted. Not anger, not fear, recognition. She knew exactly where this was going, and for the first time, she looked genuinely displeased to still be sitting there. Joy's last line wasn't a question. It was a trap wrapped in empathy. Maybe we need to talk about why that framing makes you so uncomfortable. The studio stayed silent, but it wasn't the same silence as before. This one had weight, anticipation, a sense that something had shifted, something irreversible. Jodie didn't respond immediately. She didn't blink, didn't smile, didn't perform the little polite laugh celebrities use to soften friction. Instead, she looked at Joy the way a director looks at an actor who has forgotten the script, calmly, almost sadly, as if realizing the scene had gone off the rails. Joy, Jodie said, her voice low and even, you keep using words like uncomfortable and avoidance. Joy's mouth tightened. And you keep using words like boundary and coercion, Joy snapped back. Jodie nodded once, as if confirming something. Exactly, she said. Because we're not talking about politics anymore. We're talking about permission. Joy scoffed. Permission? Jodie's eyes didn't leave her. Yes, she said. Permission? Who gets to decide what the correct public stance looks like? Who gets to interrogate who? Who gets to label silence as guilt? Joy leaned forward, tapping her papers. No one said guilt, she said quickly. That's your interpretation. Jodie didn't take the bait. That's the pattern, she continued. You say some people. You say others. You say it can be interpreted. She paused, letting each phrase hang in the air like a receipt. And then you slide the conclusion in as if it belongs to everyone, when it belongs to you. The audience didn't move. The co-host didn't breathe. Joy tried to laugh it off. Oh, please. But Jodie wasn't finished. You're not asking for clarity, Jodie said. You're asking for compliance. Joy's head snapped slightly. That is ridiculous, Joy said. You're making yourself the victim. Jodie's expression barely changed. No, she replied. I'm identifying the tactic. A flicker crossed Joy's face, irritation, then the reflex to regain control. Fine, Joy said, voice sharper. Let's talk about the tactic. Do you believe, yes or no, that public figures have a responsibility to speak out? There it was, the binary. Jodie tilted her head. Do you hear yourself? She asked gently. Joy blinked. Excuse me? You just turned a complex question into a loyalty oath, Jodie said. And you did it because you want a yes you can approve of, or a no you can punish. The audience murmured, quiet, uneasy. Joy's eyes narrowed. I'm asking for accountability, Joy insisted. People are exhausted. They want to know where you stand. Jodie nodded. I understand that, but here's the part you keep skipping. She leaned forward slightly, not aggressive, just deliberate. Where I stand is not a product, she said. It's not something I owe the room in exchange for being allowed to sit here. Joy's voice rose a notch. Nobody said product! Jodie didn't flinch. Then stop selling it like one, she replied. A small ripple of reaction moved through the audience, like wind through dry leaves. Joy stared at her, and for a moment she looked genuinely thrown, like she expected Jodie to be defensive, apologetic, careful. Not this, not calm certainty. Joy recovered quickly. Oh, come on, she said, waving a hand. You're acting like I'm attacking you. Jodie's voice stayed soft. Joy, you said I'm protected, she said. You said privilege creates blind spots. You implied my restraint is insulation, she paused. And then you said it wasn't personal. Joy opened her mouth. Jodie held up one finger. Not a scolding gesture, a director's gesture. Wait, that's what makes it personal, Jodie continued. The denial. The studio was frozen. Joy's face reddened slightly. Are you really going to sit there and pretend privilege isn't real? Joy demanded. Because that's what it sounds like. Jodie's eyes stayed steady. No, she said. I'm saying you're using the word privilege like a weapon, not a lens. Joy laughed, but it was brittle. Oh, please. Jodie nodded again, almost sympathetically. Privilege as a lens asks, what can you not see? Jodie said. Privilege as a weapon asks, how can I invalidate you? Joy leaned back, arms crossed. And you think I'm invalidating you? Jodie's answer was immediate. I think you're trying to force me into a confession you can broadcast as proof of your moral authority. A gasp, small but audible, came from somewhere in the audience. Joy's eyes widened. That is, she started, then stopped, searching for the right word. Jodie gave it to her. Control, Jodie said. That's what it is. Joy's voice sharpened into anger. You know what, Jodie? That's insulting. I'm not here for control. I'm here for truth. Jodie held her gaze. Then ask for truth, she said quietly. Not performance. Joy slammed her hand lightly on the table, not hard, but loud enough to spike the room. Okay, Joy snapped. Let's do truth. Tell us what you actually believe, right now, on this issue. Jodie didn't move. For a split second, it looked like she might answer. But instead, she did something worse, for Joy. She smiled. Not a warm smile, not a public smile, a private one, like she had just noticed the camera was still rolling. Joy, Jodie said, voice soft as velvet. You don't want my beliefs. Joy frowned. Yes, I do. Jodie shook her head slightly. No, she said. You want a headline. The audience reacted, some murmurs, a few sharp inhales. Joy's face tightened as if she'd been slapped. That is unfair, Joy said. It's accurate, Jodie replied. And then she added calmly, like placing a final piece on a board. You've been trying to steer me into a sentence you can replay. Joy tried to speak, but her words stumbled. That's not... Jodie leaned back again, eyes never leaving her. And the problem, Jodie continued, is that you've forgotten something. Joy's nostrils flared. What? She demanded. Jodie's voice dropped, quieter than before. I've been on camera longer than you've been trying to corner me. The studio went dead silent. Joy's mouth opened, then closed. Her cheeks flushed. One of the co-hosts shifted, clearly alarmed by how sharp the air had become. Joy finally spoke, voice tight. So, now you're threatening me. Jodie's expression turned flat. No, she said. I'm warning you. Joy stared at her, almost trembling with frustration. Warning me about what? Jodie didn't answer immediately. She glanced toward the audience, then back to Joy. And for the first time, she looked like someone who had made a decision she wouldn't take back. About what happens, Jodie said softly, when you push someone past the point where they care about being polite. Joy froze. The co-hosts froze. And the producers in the booth leaned forward because they could feel it. Whatever Jodie was about to say next was not going to be something Joy could laugh off. The silence after Jodie's warning felt heavier than anything that had come before it. Joy stared at her, lips pressed together, eyes sharp with frustration. This wasn't how the segment was supposed to go. The questions were meant to tighten, not backfire. The pressure was supposed to force clarity, not resistance. You don't get to threaten the host, Joy said finally, her voice clipped. That's not how this works. Jodie didn't raise her voice. I'm not threatening you, she said calmly. I'm explaining the consequence of turning a conversation into a trap. Joy scoffed. Oh, please, you're acting like I'm doing something outrageous. Jodie nodded once, as if acknowledging a familiar reaction. No, she said. You're acting like you've done this so many times, you don't notice when it crosses a line anymore. The audience was completely still. No murmurs, no nervous laughter. The studio felt suspended, like everyone was waiting to see who would move first. Joy leaned forward again, gripping the edge of the table. So, what is it you want? She demanded. An apology? A safe space? Jodie met her gaze, unblinking. What I want, she said, is for you to stop pretending this is about truth. Joy's eyes widened. That's insulting, she snapped. I've spent my entire career building a platform, Jodie interrupted quietly. Joy froze. Yes, Jodie continued, a powerful one. And with that power comes responsibility, not to corner people, but to respect the difference between inquiry and interrogation. Joy shook her head. You're being dramatic. Jodie exhaled slowly. No, she said. I'm being precise. She turned slightly toward the camera now, not performing, not grandstanding, simply acknowledging its presence. When conversations are framed so that only one answer is acceptable, Jodie said, they stop being conversations. They become tests. Joy slammed her hand lightly on the table again. This is ridiculous, she said. You came here knowing what this show is. Jodie looked back at her. I came here expecting disagreement, she said. Not coercion. Joy's voice rose. Nobody forced you to sit here? Jodie nodded. You're right. She paused. But nobody forced you to push this either. The room felt brittle, like glass under pressure. Joy tried one last time to regain footing. Fine, she said. Then answer this. Do you or do you not believe that staying silent helps the wrong people? Jodie didn't hesitate. No, she said. I believe demanding public declarations as proof of virtue helps the wrong people. Joy opened her mouth, but Jodie continued. Because it trains audiences to value performance over principle. It rewards volume over thought. And it punishes anyone who refuses to be shaped into something convenient. Joy's face flushed. So you think you're above it, she said bitterly. Above accountability. Jodie's voice softened, and somehow became more devastating. No, she said. I think accountability starts with knowing when to stop. Joy stared at her, breathing shallow, clearly furious now. You don't get to control this show, Joy snapped. Jodie nodded again. I know, she said, but I do get to control my presence. That sentence landed differently. Joy laughed sharply. Oh, now you're leaving? Jodie looked at her for a long moment, not angry, not smug, just resolved. Yes, she said. The word echoed. Joy blinked. You're seriously going to walk out? Jodie placed her hands on the table and stood. The movement sent a visible ripple through the studio. One of the co-hosts whispered something under her breath. The audience gasped, not loudly, but collectively. Jodie adjusted her jacket, then looked directly at Joy. I stayed long enough for it to be clear, she said. Clear about what? Joy demanded. Jodie leaned slightly closer, not threatening, not theatrical. About the difference between asking questions, she said, and trying to own the answers. Joy opened her mouth. Jodie didn't let her finish. You wanted a moment, she said calmly. Here it is. Then she turned toward the camera one last time. And for anyone watching, Jodie added, this is what saying no looks like. She stepped away from the table. Joy shot to her feet. This is unbelievable, she said. You don't just storm off. But Jodie was already walking. The camera followed her for a beat longer than expected. Past the table, past the chairs, toward the edge of the set. No music played, no cut came. The silence was complete. Joy stood frozen, mouth half open, eyes darting toward the producer's booth. Finally, she turned back to the camera, trying to recover. Well, she said stiffly, that just happened. But it was clear to everyone watching, the control was gone. The pressure had snapped, and the moment Joy tried to force into a headline had turned into something she couldn't spin. The screen faded out not with applause, but with absence. Jodie Foster was gone, and the silence she left behind was louder than anything that had been said.